Go to these shows with your primary focus being feedback, your secondary focus being that return on investment or profit, because that feedback can help you get that profit. Because what if it's your pricing that's the issue? What if it's the packaging? You have to tweak those things to make sales.
Hello, welcome, Azhelle. I mispronounced your name in the very first take of this. So tell me, how and where does this beautiful name come from?
So my sister actually made it up when she was 8 years old. I know. She came up with the spelling and the pronunciation. She loved the French language and she wanted a name that sounded French.
Oh, it does.
Yeah. So Azhelle.
Azhelle.
Yeah.
Well, beautiful. That's a beautiful name.
Thank you.
And where are you coming from right now?
I am at the tail end of my honeymoon in Colombia. We're in Bogota at a beautiful like Airbnb with like a outdoor area and a patio. It's just beautiful. It's really nice.
Brilliant. Well, thank you for joining us on the Artist Appeals. So we're going to start right away with the 5 rapid fire questions. And I've massaged these a little bit because you are the toy expert. So number 1, what is the number 1 top selling toy that you've helped develop?
Yeah, I had to think about this for a little bit, but I guess it was something really recent. I designed this item called MC Lobster. It's an adult toy. It actually stands for menstruation crustacean.
I was thinking like MC Hammer.
Yeah, so like MC Lobster, I guess, was like the internal term that we would call it when we were working on it. So it's officially the menstruation crustacean. And it's just like a plush lobster that has like a heating pad in it for your, time of the month. And it also holds a tampon for you. So
an emergency tampon.
And like, I remember when I got the product, I was like, this is so silly. And then I used it and I was like, this is amazing. It's so good. It's so good. It's so perfect. So yeah, it keeps your tummy warm and comforts you while you're going.
Does it like vibrate?
No, it doesn't. It's just a cute lobster. I mean, I didn't come up with the concept. I was just the designer on it. So I designed his look and his shape and did the turnaround drawings and stuff. So
we'll have to get a picture of that to stick in here or a link. I want to see this.
It's from the company What Do You Mean if you're looking for it.
What do you mean? Fantastic.
Yeah.
All right. Number 2, what is the one thing you love to do in your business?
I love a lot of things, but it depends on my mood. So sometimes I'm like, I love just answering student questions because it's really free flowing. They're already a part of my program and they're just popping questions into like our kind of chat. And I love just being able to help them out really quickly and directly. But then I get a lot
What's your program?
Oh, Toy Creators Academy.
Cool.
And then I also just get a lot of joy out of connecting them when things work out and also, I mean, even when things don't work out, there's like a lot of people have had these like dreams for toy ideas for so long. And the fact that I can, if an idea is ready or if I can help an idea get ready, that I can connect them with the right person who can make something happen for them or just tell them if it's worth them continuing to develop it. It's awesome to see them like, they're like, oh, I never thought I'd be able to connect with the inventor relations person from Hasbro or from this company. And I love making that happen. So,
that is so cool. That must be really gratifying to hook them up. I get it. I remember when my students would go out and get, a job or an internship and they'd come back and they'd be like, oh, I'm doing this amazing thing. And you kind of live vicariously through it.
Right. Yeah.
Right. Okay. So number 3, what is the one thing you hate to do in your business?
Like analyzing my finances and adjusting prices and products and services accordingly. I hate it because I love doing what I do. And honestly, I would love to figure out a way to not have to get paid for it since I just want to do it. I just want to do it. I don't want to have to charge, but when you get those financial statements,
I think so many creatives, that is what we hear all the time is, we just want to make what we want to make. And it's so fun and it's so amazing. And we would do it for free. I think that is when you're really on the right path is when you do it anyways and not even get paid for it.
Right.
That's
Every time I get my financial statement, I'm like, okay, so I need to do more of this and less of this. I got to charge more for this. And it's like, oh, okay.
Right. All right. Number 4. What is the funniest or weirdest experience you've had in the toy world?
I would probably say meeting my now husband.
Besides the menstruation crustacean.
Yeah. Well, okay. 2 things. Meeting my husband because I didn't know we went to the same college, but we didn't go for the same major at the same time. So I randomly had gone to a networking event that normally I don't go to. It happens every year at New York Toy Fair. And I randomly went to this networking event and I saw a friend of mine. And I was like, hey, friend. And then across the table, I saw my now husband and I remembered him from like 6 years ago in college. We weren't even friends. I just remembered seeing him. And I was like, Christian Castro? And then like, that's how our whole relationship started. So that's kind of crazy.
With a question.
Yeah. With an assault on his name. Yeah. But other than that, I would say one time I was at a toy industry event and I was recording content because everything is content. And I hold up my phone and I'm like, hey there, toy people. And off to the right, someone goes, hey, I know who you are. And I was like, what? That's so cool because of the podcast and like the toy coach and stuff. So that was really cool. Yeah.
That is really cool. Yeah. I had that happen at Astra just this year where I was sitting there and I met with Matt and he's like, oh yeah, I watched one of your episodes. I'm like, what? You somebody watched me?
Right. Yeah.
Like, it's always so startling.
Cool. Yeah.
And I was like, what episode? He's like, Larry Elmore. And which is, kind of totally off the radar. Like Larry Elmore is not in the toy field. So it was really neat that he watched that episode.
Yeah, who's he?
Larry Elmore is this fantastic older gentleman that has illustrated like 200 covers for some of the great science fiction and fantasy books like Stephen King and Isaac Asimov. And he's an illustrator. He does science fiction and fantasy art. Like some of those, I don't want to call it cheesy, but like the 80s Conan the Barbarian books.
Yeah.
Like he was kind of one of those like guys that did that stuff way back in the day and has been doing it ever since. Like he's amazing. Yeah, his episode was really neat because he shared his private collection with us. So instead of it being more of a how-to, it's more of a look into his private art collection, the ones he's kept and the stories behind them.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah, it was really cool. Really fun episode. All right, so number 5 is one of these traditional ones. What is the one most important piece of advice you would give yourself if you were just starting out again today? Like knowing what you know now, what would you tell your younger self?
I would say, how young? How young are we going? No, it's okay. Same advice. I would probably say listen to your gut. Listen to what you want to do, regardless of what other people say you should or is the right way. Of course, there's limitations, but I think I have this propensity to question myself, and all it does is slow down progress. And I see now more than ever, and you probably agree, that there's no one path to success. And so many of the successful people in the creative field, in the online world, even stars, they kind of did it their own way. They forged their own path. They didn't go one specific direction. So I think I just say, like, listen to my gut. If I want to do something weird or in an oddball way or out of order, if I want to do something for fun that people think I should be paid for, or something I want to be paid for that people think I should do for fun, like just follow my own gut, and yeah.
That's really good advice. We creators really do come at these from such different ways. Everybody comes at this from a different way. And that's one thing the podcast really shows is there's no right path. There's no specific way. But what this does is tries to find that common thread, common threads. And so using the common threads, what I did is I made an acronym for the podcast, APPEALS. And so I try and always keep these things in order by following that acronym of art, product, presentation, educate, amplify, licensing and contract terms, and success measurements. So we're going to roll through those real quick. And here we go.
Okay.
So, Art, you are a toy coach and a toy designer. Tell me just a little bit about how you came into this world of toys.
Oh, I just loved kids. Like I don't for a very long time. I actually wanted to be a teacher first. I was telling my grandma, my sister, my whole family, I'm like, I'm gonna be a teacher one day. I just want to help the kids. That eventually turned into me kind of focusing on exhibition design, like children's exhibitions in college,
Okay,
which
like kids museums and stuff?
yeah. So I was in an exhibition design program, but it was only a 2-year program. So I needed another
Mm.
2 years afterwards. And I was talking to one of my teachers and he was like, you're doing all these kids exhibitions. Like, why don't you check out the toy program? And I was like, what, there's a toy program? What does that mean?
What school did you go to?
The Fashion Institute of Technology in New York City.
Fantastic. Good
Yeah,
school.
a great school. And so affordable back then. So and yes, I went out for the toy design major, and the person who started the program took a liking to me, took me under her wing. I worked really hard and got in, and ever since then it just kind of I stayed in the toy industry.
Oh, fantastic. So, what was the first toy you ever designed?
Like not professionally.
Yeah.
Oh man, it was so bad. It was a it was a brownie.
A brownie? Like a piece of food?
Yeah, it was like a personified brownie. So
Okay.
his name was Chip. I don't even remember what he did, honestly, but I had drawn this brownie with like a chef hat and like these big eyes and like arms, and it was so ugly and weird. And he was brown and he had chocolate chips. And it was so bad. I was so shocked she let me into that program. It's so bad. Oh yeah, his name was Chip.
It's those early trials and errors and silliness that get us where, you've got to
Yeah.
pivot, right?
Right.
So, okay. So, what was the first toy you designed professionally then?
Oh, I think, well, okay, I guess professionally, technically, it'd be my internships. I worked at Madame Alexander for about 3 to 4 months as an intern. I designed about 7 dolls for them.
Oh,
So
cool.
I think the first one was either this doll themed after the On Top of Spaghetti nursery rhyme
Okay.
or
On top of
Sacagawea
old
on top
spaghetti,
of spaghetti, all
all
covered in
covered with
cheese.
cheese.
Yeah. So I think the first project was they wanted to do nursery rhyme dolls. And they were like, but we need nursery rhymes we've never done before. So I came up with a bunch and they all, like 4 of them got approved. So I made like a
Nice.
little bunny foo-foo on top of spaghetti. I don't remember the other ones
Oh,
actually.
I love Little Bunny Foo Foo. I remember that from going to camp.
I
Little
love little
bunny
bunny
foo foo
foo-foo
hopping
hopping
through the
through the
forest,
forest. Yes. The
picking up
field.
the field mice and popping them on the head. You got to do the.
Yes. Yes. No one knew what it was. They were like, what's that? How do you not know?
How do you not know Little Bunny Foo Foo?
I don't know, man.
It's one of the best morals too. Be nice to someone, or else the fairy will get you, man. The fae will get
The
you.
Fae will. Oh man.
So,
Yeah.
what is the first step in developing a toy? How do you
Yeah.
come up with your ideas?
So different ways. It depends. If you're just a creative and you just want to come up with any idea, I say look outside of the toy industry for inspiration, like
Hmm.
really outside. I went on a bachelorette party not too long ago, and I went to this amazing theater performance that inspired so many toy ideas for me. And it was just the colors and the
I'm almost scared to ask a
yeah, you probably
bachelorette
shouldn't.
party
No, no.
theater voice. Mm.
No, it was like burlesque. It was like burlesque. It's called
I love
Seven
burlesque.
Sins.
Okay.
It was just beautiful and astonishing and inspiring. The best toy ideas, like LOL Surprise, came
Mm.
from outside of the toy industry, like not looking at what everybody else is doing, but instead looking at just interesting art and what kids are already engaging in.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's first. But when you're working full time in the industry, it's a little bit more structured, which I kind of like.
Hmm.
Where they come and they say, "We've got a problem. The problem is our competitor is taking over this part of the arts and crafts aisle. We need to
Mm.
compete with them. We need something at the $10 price point. Has to be innovative, patentable. What can you come up with?" So
Mm.
I like that because for me, that's challenging and that's like critical thinking and problem solving.
Yeah.
And in that case, you're doing more like research, like active research, reading reviews online, figuring out what people like and don't like about existing product, and then going into toy stores and seeing what exists and what the price points are and how much product how much components are in each product at those price points.
Interesting. Very cool. That's interesting because it kind of parallels the art licensing field a little bit in that you're looking at trends, right?
Yes, 100%.
So
Yeah.
do trends become a big thing for you guys? Do you do trend reports in the toy market?
Yeah, I actually, when at my first job, we did an internal trend report because we were the innovations team. So we would look at trends that people would identify, like, Pantone has a color of the year. You could look at
Yep.
fashion shows to see fabric trends that might translate
Mm-hmm.
to toys. But we would also try to identify up and coming trends by looking at things like new movie releases, by looking at just the fashion industry and how people are creating playful things in that world, and like products in the home goods sector, and try to identify trends that might be coming down the line. And we would build trend reports off of that. So yeah, definitely you're looking at
Cool.
current trends, but the toy industry works a year out. So you actually want to identify coming trends.
Right. So how do you build a trend report? Do you just take pictures and put them in a PDF, or like, is it
Okay.
just totally
Yeah.
random?
No, it's a good one. So
Non sequitur.
no, it's a great question. So I would start back in the day, I would start a lot with Pinterest,
Mm,
searching a lot of different things, just trying to get like a base, like where do people think trends are right now? I
okay.
also like to look at what they were the year prior, because I think looking at the year prior, looking at right now will help you kind of draw a timeline and a thesis on what's to come, right?
Ah, yeah, like it's a progression.
Yeah, like where is it? We just did, Aztec, then everybody shifted to metallic, and you try to look at, actually in my course Toy Creators Academy, as I'm talking about this, I'm realizing I have in there something called a trend timeline. And
Mm,
it's the same concept where you look at what happened in the past. Say Aztec print was really popular. What else was happening when Aztec print was really, really popular? Was it a movie? Was it a TV show? Why did
mm-hmm.
that become popular? Then you look at right now, what's really popular? Why is that happening? That helps you predict the future. So, okay, so now what movies is Disney going to release in 2 years or 1 year? You can find all that out online. What books are planned to come out? What kind of fashion are people talking about, or what is the colors that are going to be for next season? So you can kind of create your own little timeline to figure out what is to come.
Fascinating. Very cool. Thank you for sharing that with us.
Yeah.
Very cool. So that leads us to the product end of this, P for product. So you find your inspiration, these trends, right? And then you've got to turn it into a product. Can you just walk us through a little bit of your thought process or your particular process for how you take an idea, this trend reports idea, and then a prototype? Or
Sure. So when I want to split it into two halves, because when you're
yeah.
working for a company, it's a very different experience than when you're doing it for yourself. When you're working for a company, toy company, there's so many more checks and balances. So say you do that research, you have an idea. I'm going to give an example of a time we did this. Our problem to solve was coming up with an idea for the fashion craft market. So we did the research, we came up with a concept, we prepared an entire pitch deck for this concept. We did product renderings, we made a couple of samples. And then at that stage, what you do is you pitch it to the head of the department, or in this case, it was the CMO. And the CMO at the time didn't like what we had. He was like, it's not innovative enough. So we're like, oh my gosh, we just spent a month working on this. We got to go back. We got to fix it. We got to make him happy. I don't want to lose my job,
Right.
Thinking all those things.
High stress.
Yeah, high stress. So then my boss and I at the time went back, and within like 15 minutes, we came up with like a major innovation. It was something that was patentable. It just, I don't know, I think all the month of planning and research, and then, that challenge coming from the CMO just kind of sparked us. So the idea that we came up with was a system that would simplify screen printing and would combine the paint packet and the screen, the squeegee that spreads the paint all into one. And we came up with it. We made a little prototype, meaning we used like styrene sheets that we had in the office. We used plastic. We put paint together. We made a little prototype. We tested it. It worked. Took a video, sent it to the CMO. How's this? And loved it. So then from there, what happens is it actually went over to another team, like the design and development team, who designed the packaging and the logo. And then it went to another team, was like the product team, who figured out the placement of how they would present it in store. And they put together the presentation. It went off to meetings with like retailers like Walmart and Target. They placed orders, and eventually it ended up in store. I guess I should say, in the meantime, we were on the back end doing development with an overseas factory. While the design team was doing their design development, we were developing the packet itself to make sure we had the right thickness of styrene, the right thickness of paint, the right thickness of the plastic that would hold the paint. The tear function was working properly. So there's like a lot of things happening.
A lot of moving pieces, a lot of technical stuff. Yeah. So if you were one person and you wanted to boil this down and do this all yourself, and you don't have a team, how do you create a product from your idea?
Yeah. So the only thing I like to caution people when they're doing it themselves, you don't have that person to be your checks and balances, the person who's going to tell you like, oh, this isn't innovative enough, like pump the brakes. So that's why I think when you're doing it yourself, research and like surveys is your most important step. You come up with the idea, you might even make a handmade prototype. You should make a handmade prototype, but then you should start asking people who aren't related to you, who aren't your friends, like what they really think of this product, and maybe not even be in the room with them when they answer. Maybe have someone else get them to answer and record it so that you can have an unbiased, objective view of the situation. And they're not being afraid to tell the truth because they know the creators in the room, right?
Right.
And before you go and you work with a factory in China, or you hire a graphic artist to help you with packaging or anything like that, you want to do that research and get the feedback so you don't waste your money on the wrong product. And then,
or even if it needs a slight tweak or a pivot too.
Yes. Yeah. It's definitely going to need a pivot or a tweak. Honestly, you're not doing the toy design right if you don't have to change anything at all. You have to, no one's perfect. No idea is perfect out of the gate. You want changes. It will make
good advice. It is true. When I did the iConnect craft stuff, I thought it was originally for the mixed media field, and that we would put it together with brass eyelets that we would use these. Oh, I tested all these eyelet setters, and then there was this one that I really loved from Fiskars. Well, it was spring. It was like a spring. Oh, I actually probably have one here. And here, look at this. I got one right here. And you take this thing and you put the brass eyelet there, and you pull it up and whap, you snap it, and it leaves this huge dent in your work surface. So you got to have it. It was fantastically fun. It makes very satisfying thump. But I found out kids can't do this, and neither can most of the scrapbookers. Like, you have to have arm strength. You have to have it snap straight down. So even though no tools required other than this, so we pivoted to mini brads, and that seemed to be much better. But we're pivoting right now.
Yeah.
I think you've always got to be pivoting, right? Pivot.
But you see, like, I love that. Like, that for me is a jump. I don't know what your mini brass is, but for me, I see that and I'm like, well, how could you keep that fun thump? And how could you keep that spring action? Oh, I see.
So these are 1/16 inch mini brads. They're rounded on one edge, and you stick them through two pieces of chipboard, and then you use this tool to spread the other side so that it becomes rounded as well and holds into the paper. Fantastically fun. I think I have the only retail market for where you can buy packages of those, because I still get people that find me out of the blue and they're like, oh, they use them on random things. The model train industry occasionally hits me up for them for their tents for grommets on their miniature trains.
That's cute. That's cute.
So anyways, all right. So definitely test your prototype, right? All right. So product is important. And, I think it's really fabulous to have you on because you're a toy designer. But I think a lot of creatives have artwork that can translate into toys or
Yeah.
ideas that can translate into toys. I meet a lot of designers that want to make card games or they want to put their art on tarot cards. Kind of a random question that wasn't on our list. But so for someone that's like an artist, a real creative who wants to make something, say like tarot cards or a card game or even a board game, do you have any suggestions on where to get prototypes for that type of thing or how to start going about it?
Yes. I mean, hopefully your artists already have, and I think they do, they already have kind of a following. Because I think that's the number one thing. We want to create a product, but you want people to buy it, right? So we want to make sure you have a little bit of a following. But once you have that set, you just gotta find the right factory. I actually just had a great factory on my show. They're called Long Pack Toys.
Mm,
This for my podcast was episode 137.
okay.
um, great factory in the sense of they are open to working with people kind of just starting out.
Mm,
And they do specialize in like paper goods games initially.
mm-hmm.
So I think that's always beneficial for someone just starting.
Right.
If that factory's MOQs, meaning minimum order quantities, are too high for you, or if they're too busy to take on your project right now, I always recommend people starting with a resource like Alibaba. I talked about that like early on in my podcast too, just about going online, researching factories in China. You want to search by the type of product you want to create. Then you want to filter by companies that have been around at least 5 years,
Oh, good advice.
factories that have been around at least 5 years, but most of them by now are like 7, 10 plus years. Um, and then, you just want to start having a conversation of what is the cost to get a sample of my product made. For tarot cards and the things you were mentioning, it's actually the easiest type of toy product to
Yeah.
create. I always recommend
Yeah.
people start with paper goods whenever you can, because like
Yeah.
the MOQ is so low and you can actually get a pre-production sample that looks like production, opposed to plastic goods where you have to
Right.
invest in a mold before you can get a real pre-production sample.
Right.
So yeah, so I would say start looking for a factory, start talking to them about making samples, then prep your artwork, which if you're an artist, you probably already know what that means, like set up your artwork for printing. If you don't know, you can usually ask the factory, how do you like to receive artwork? And they will tell you.
Mm,
And start that first sample. Make
yeah.
sure you have a clear understanding of what your retail price would be, so you know how much of a factory cost you can manage in order to actually turn a profit. I know we don't like to talk about profit as creatives, but
No,
you want to
no. On
make
this
sure.
show, we always want to talk money. Let's talk the elephant in the room.
Yeah,
Always.
got to make the profit.
Well, otherwise
Um,
you can't keep doing it.
yeah, yeah,
You know, so you mentioned earlier having a little bit of a following, but I know that's a big question for a lot of artists and creatives and feedback too, It might be hard. A lot of artists are more introverts.
hmm
Um, so what do you think about the idea of getting a print on demand sample and going to a conference and getting feedback that way from the general public? Do you ever recommend that or
yeah.
as kind of a testing prototype?
Yeah, I would recommend that. So like before I had the toy coach, I had a company. I still have it. I just don't really do it, but it's called Customize Me, where I did fashion. And so I did a lot of trade shows where I brought my physical products to the show. And I do wish that I invested less in inventory early on, because I was getting so much good feedback when I
Right.
went to the show that I was like, oof, I would love to do what you're saying, but like I have all this inventory. How about you buy this first? And then
Right.
I'll
Right.
I'll get to that idea you had. Um, and
Don't
yeah,
invest in inventory, invest in product samples and go
yes,
to shows if you don't have friends and family that'll give you honest feedback. Um,
yes.
yeah, yeah, definitely.
And
All
go
right.
open minded, because I feel like when I went to trade shows, I didn't like clothing trade shows or fairs. I was going with the mindset of, oh, I have these goods to sell, but I wasn't really going with a mindset of I should get feedback on my product. And because of that, when I got the feedback, I kind of heard it, but it wasn't my primary focus. I would say for people doing this, go to these shows with your primary focus being feedback, your secondary focus being that return on investment or profit, because that feedback can help you get that profit. Because what if it's your pricing that's the issue? What if it's the packaging? You have to tweak those things to make sales.
Oh, I agree 100%. You know, I got tons of amazing feedback on I Connect Crafts products at the last two toy shows, Toy Fest West and Astra. And if I didn't have an open mindset to hearing that, I think it would have been painful.
Yes. Yeah.
Maybe not
like, I'm not here for that. You're like, I'm not here. I'm here for you to buy it.
Right. Or like you want to argue with them. Well, this is why I did it. Instead of just, being open and receptive, you kind of you end up being like, yeah, but I tested all these and this is the way we do it because there's so much rationale when you're developing a product. So you really do have to be open. So presentation, we did art, we did product, we did presentation. What are some best practices or tips or tricks you can share with us on packaging? Because I know how important presentation is in the fine art world, as well as in the toy world. You're competing against thousands and thousands of other SKUs, both in the remaining toy stores on the shelf and online. So what are some best practices for packaging?
The big image you see on the front of a box is called the beauty shot in the toy industry.
Okay.
That beauty shot should explain what the product does without the person needing to read it. People's attention spans are short. They might not get close enough to see the text. So like your beauty shot and maybe like your logo should give the person an understanding of like what is going on. Initially, especially if you don't have a strong brand identity where you're not already known and you're expecting people to just walk by and be drawn to it. And then aside from that, it's really just knowing if your product is going into a retail space, knowing what other products are in that retail space and what their colors are and what their packaging style is, so that you can choose, are you going to be someone who kind of differentiates their packaging? Or are you going to try to assimilate your packaging and almost look like an off-brand version of something that might be cheaper, or a little bit better? So there's different ways to attack it. Are you going to try to just look like a cheaper, more affordable alternative? Or are you going to try to differentiate yourself with packaging and stand out? Like maybe everyone's doing craft packaging and you're like, I'm going to do rainbow packaging, like Lisa Frank rainbow. You've got to know what exists in the market so you can choose how you're going to stand out or how you're going to blend in.
Who's Lisa Frank?
Well, stop it. Stop the madness.
I really don't think I know. I'm going to have to look her up.
Wait, really? No, yes, you do.
No.
She was like the queen of was it the 80s or the 90s? Probably the 80s. Just like rainbow, white and black tigers, like stationery. Like if you had Lisa Frank stationery, you were just like the most popular kid at school. Just like imagine a rainbow tiger just threw up on everything. Just like that's Lisa Frank.
Well, I will tell you, I was not popular in school. I was, I'm going to date myself here, but I was goth before goth was cool.
Oh my gosh. That's funny.
I'm older than I look, and I was like the Anne Rice reading, wearing all black, emo, middle school.
You weren't going to be into Lisa Frank.
Yeah. And then high school, I would have been the grunge era. It was the era for me of, grunge. Sublime would have been early college. That's
so funny.
Yeah. So, rainbows were not my thing.
Super rainbows.
No rainbows.
Okay. That makes sense why you don't know the Lisa.
I was too angsty. Angsty artist.
Gosh. I loved the rainbows, obviously.
Yeah, I love it. Cool. So fantastic. What are some key attributes that you think, you have so much experience in this field. What are some things that you've seen that really make a hit? Like, I know this isn't going to be the end all be all, but we all
Right.
want to know, what are the things that make something go viral? What are some the things that you've seen that just make something like the most popular toy at Christmas that's selling out?
I feel like if I'd figured this out, I would be, I would be viral.
Of
But
course.
what
Of
I've
course.
seen in other toys, okay, so it's not just toys, but also people I've interviewed
Right.
about when they've gone viral, how it happened. You,
Yeah.
they already tend to have somewhat of an engaged following, and it's a
Okay.
very, very niche following. So it's like, people are following me because I created this coloring book for about Black kings and queens. I'm referencing Danielle Morel Cox, who was just on my podcast. That's how
Oh,
she went
neat.
viral.
Neat.
Or there's this toy store, good friend of mine, Richard Durr. He owns a Learning Express, and it's a very niche, like local following of people that love this toy store for
Yeah.
birthdays and holidays and all this stuff. So I see like when an account or a brand has this like niche following, that's the base for the virality. Then when you post something that can either like a toy that can either make an adult's like everyday boring life more fun, like everyday boring adult stuff that we always have to do, but then there's like, I don't know, for an example, an example would be, I'm just thinking my friend has a jewelry line that is like themed off of like toys and cookies and things like that, like playful
Oh,
jewelry.
yeah,
So
cool.
yeah, so like something like that makes everyday life a little bit more playful. But then for kids, it seems to be like things that are related to like challenges or just like gross, just gross or challenges.
Yeah, I have two boys. Oh, they're all about Mr. Beast. And
Mr. Beast.
oh, yeah, he's a YouTuber who's banking it. He's like the sixth most popular YouTube on the internet. And he does these crazy challenges, like, and gives away millions of dollars. And it's all
Okay.
about the challenges. Um, and they're crazy, and some of them are gross. These guys are like 10-year-olds in 20-year-old bodies.
Oh my gosh.
My
Wow.
boys love them. I'm like, stop watching Mr. Beast.
Please. Like
The ones that drive me crazy is Mr. Beast Reacts. It's just him and his friend wearing a headset and being like watching stuff. And then, you know,
yeah.
oh my
Oh,
God, like just reacting like 10-year-olds.
yeah. Yeah.
Or whoa, dude, or bros. Bros is the big word right now that the 10-year-olds are using. They call each other it bros. Bro.
That's really funny.
God, they're so silly. Okay, so we did art, we did product, we did presentation. We are moving on to educate. And I don't really mean how do you educate yourself, although that's part of it. But I use this term more as like, how do you educate your audience? How do you communicate and market and educate your audience as to your product? So,
Mm.
let's start with, what conferences do you go to? Because I always like to hit on what are the major conferences, because there's so many out there for
Yeah.
the different industries. So, what are some of your favorite conferences? Because number one, that's a great place to learn.
Yeah. There's so many, but also since COVID, it's changed where there's like so many virtual options now
Oh,
too.
yeah.
But
Do you
most
like the
recent,
virtual ones?
I mean, I do. I do. I do. I do enjoy the in-person ones, but you cannot catch everything. And it's exhausting. You can't catch everything.
Oh my
So it's a
God,
little bit
yeah.
frustrating for me. I think I like the in-person for the actual trade show aspect walking, but
Yeah.
I think I prefer the virtual for the like educational. Just
Interesting.
yeah. I mean, obviously, like learning in person is better, but just for the time's sake and just for not being able to hit everything, needing to eat lunch, like it's just, I
Yeah.
want to hit them all. And you can't do that when you're
Yeah.
in person trying to go to a trade show. And anyway, I'm taking us off topic. So
No, no, it's okay. Sometimes
sorry.
off topic stuff is the best.
Right.
So, which
So
conferences do you go to in person? Which ones do you spring
yes.
for?
So
And which
usually,
virtual ones do you spring for too?
well, usually it's New York Toy Fair, but that hasn't happened in a while. But hopefully we'll come back
Yeah.
this year. Shy Tag also hasn't happened for a while, but I watched that
Shy
virtually.
Tag.
Well, now it's called People of Play. I think People of Play
Play.
Week.
Okay.
Yeah, but the old name
Haven't
was
heard
Shy
of
Tag.
that one.
Have you heard of the Taggy Awards?
No.
Oh, okay. Well,
Do
it's all one and the
tell.
same. The Taggy Award. I recently won a Taggy Award, but no.
Rock on, dude. Nice.
Shameless
Way to go.
self promo. So, no, the Shy Tag is like an inventor innovation conference. It's
Oh.
been renamed to People of Play Week, but it's been virtual for like 2 years. That might be why, you don't know. Matt Nuccio is part of it. So you might know.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll look that one up. People of Play. That
Yeah.
is so much more memorable to me than whatever
Well,
the other name was.
it started as a local show. So it was
Okay.
Chicago Toy and Game Week.
Okay.
So Shy Tag for short. So now, yeah, they're
Oh.
expanding.
I wouldn't have been able to spell that.
Yeah.
I would have been spelling it
honestly,
SHYTAG. Shy
Yes,
Tag.
that's how they tell you to pronounce it actually on their website. It's so funny. But I loved it because, like, for me as a toy person, once you're in the industry, there's something, in my opinion, nice about this shows having these like cities they're branded for. Like New York Toy Fair gets a vibe of New York. Shy Tag gets a vibe of Chicago. And you just kind of like, as you're planning your annual calendar, you're like, I'm going to be in Chicago in November, and I'm going to be in New York in February. And it's just, I don't know, it's like a flow and a vibe, but whatever, that's ending now.
I can't let you go on that little comment there about planning your annual calendar.
Yeah.
I think that's actually a really great tip that I want to tease out here for people. Is like, I never used to do this. I never used to plan out a calendar. And then I'd hear about these great events like the week before, or or even a month before, and then I'd be scrambling, or I'd find out about them totally afterwards. I'm like, oh man.
Yeah.
So when do you plan out your annual calendar?
Oh my gosh. I mean, nowadays I try to book as soon as I hear something is finalized because of the prices of plane tickets.
Right.
So I'm like booking 4 months in advance my tickets.
Yeah.
So you can't fully plan, like book a spot to stay a year in advance. But I actually created this thing called like a toy trade show handbook, because I wanted to like know all the shows that were coming up. So you can go through this handbook and be like, okay, so this is coming up in January. This is coming up in November. And I just mentally say like, I'm definitely going here, definitely going here. Maybe we'll go here. Maybe we'll go there. And then in my Google Calendar, I'll block off like the week. Because if you don't, like, people will book meetings, you'll book podcasts, you'll do, and then I've had that happen where I knew I was going to an event in 3 months, but I hadn't bought the tickets or the hotel yet. So that information wasn't on my calendar, blocking that time. And then I had like interviews and I had consultation calls. And and so you can't do that. So I say at least
extra
6 months before. Yeah. At least 6 months before, just block off that time in your calendar. And I actually make it like annual sometimes. So I don't even have to go in next year, and at least something will be blocked. You might have to move
I like that idea.
Yeah.
Do you have this handbook available to the public?
Yeah, it's on my website. If you go into thetoycoach.com, there's like a shop tab and there's a toy trade show handbook. But also, if you want to do the work manually yourself, there's this site called, I think it's 10 times. I think that's
10x.
No, I think it's called 10, like literally the number 10 and then times.
Well, I actually put together a calendar as well that I try and keep up to date. Now, mine spans multiple industries, though. Right. So I have I call it the calendar art. Talk about French. It's calendar apostrophe art.
Oh, fancy.
Well, it's easier to say if you look at it like that, calendar art or whatever. Where I've tried to create a spreadsheet that shows all of the conferences in science fiction and fantasy, as well as the submission deadlines for like greeting cards. So I'll be definitely adding some of yours, but there's so many. So as I get and hear about them from podcast guests, I add them to this calendar art. But I want to check out your handbook. I want to copy.
Yeah.
But I love it.
The site 10 times is good too. So you could look there.
Yeah. There's a lot of them out there. There's some that you can sort by region.
Yes.
I just found out about a new one about the Craft Fair Insider. If you want to do craft fairs, that lists all the craft fairs across the country. If that's your, gig.
Yeah. One reason I guess I thought I would make that handbook, I thought it would be helpful to people that were listening to my podcast. But then I realized as I was writing it, opposed to the sites that just kind of list by region and list the name of the show and how much it is to go there. This was more like kind of tips from somebody who's an insider in the industry, who's some of the shows I've been to, some I haven't, but some I have friends that have gone that have told me certain things. So there's like tips inside this handbook just to say like, this show's good for this. This is why you should go. Look out for this, look out for that. That's not so much focused on how much the show is and where it is and like all that. It's just more like, if you're an inventor, this event will happen at the show and this is why you should be there.
Yeah.
It's a little bit of a different, right? Like,
yeah, no, that's why I always like to ask that question is because, you know, there are certain shows that if you're getting into a niche, you need to be at. Yeah. And so hearing it from the people that are, and which ones are the best and which ones aren't going to be rewarding. Yeah. So.
And I had my friend download it who works in the toy industry with me. And I was like, why did you buy this handbook from me? And he was like, because it's awesome. And I'm like, okay, thanks. I'm like, if someone in the industry thinks it's helpful, that's cool too.
That is a big compliment.
I know.
Compliment. Very cool. So speaking of conferences and educating your audience, you're a podcaster as well.
Yeah.
What's your podcast and where can we find it? And how do you suggest people kind of start to grow and educate their audience? Like, what do you find the most successful?
Okay. So my podcast is Making It in the Toy Industry. I call it the Toy Coach Podcast, Making It in the Toy Industry.
Fantastic.
Yes. You can find it. Yes. It's just direct. It's exactly is what it is. You can find it at thetoycoachpodcast.com or just thetoycoach.com and there's a podcast button. And the second question was, how do I recommend people promote their selves?
Yeah. Like, have you found podcasting to be one of the best ways to grow an audience? Or do you, are you on Instagram? Are you on Facebook? Like, what platforms do you find rewarding, successful,
rewarding? I would find none of them rewarding. So, I mean, podcasting, I guess, I don't see podcasting as a platform, but I guess I would say, I think podcasting would be the most rewarding. I always wanted to do something with my voice. I felt like I had a good audio voice, like for voiceovers and things.
Yeah.
So I'm happy to do podcasting because I get to use that voice. I get to use my knowledge. I get to share how I think. I get to interview people, which is fun.
Yeah.
So I love the podcast for that. It can be a good way to grow your audience, but it requires a lot of promotion on other apps. So the podcast alone won't be enough to get new listeners or to hold on to listeners. Mm-hmm. It's email marketing, it's Instagram, it's Facebook, it's LinkedIn. Mm-hmm. It's like, I actually, because I was just on my honeymoon, I didn't do anything for like 2 weeks.
Yeah.
And I can see a significant drop in downloads this past week. The week before was pretty okay, but this past week I did notice a significant drop in downloads. So I'm like, oh, the promotion works, but it's like constant. It's like, exhausting.
Well, that leads us perfectly into amplify. How do you amplify and automate? So how do you do all that? Like, do you have any apps you use? Like, do you have a system, a spreadsheet? Like what?
I do have a system, but I don't love it. So I'm not committed to it yet. I use an app called SmarterQ.
SmarterQ. Okay.
Yeah. For posting to all the social media places.
There's a lot of those out there now.
Yeah. SmarterQ got recommended to me by someone. And I've kept, every time I try to leave it, I look at another platform and it's more expensive and they don't post to as many places as I need to. So it becomes not worth it.
Right.
So I just keep staying. So I'm just going to stay again, I guess. And it's good. It posts everywhere. Mostly it's all right.
And can you can preset your posts to go out?
You can, but these days, the most important posts that you want to post, you can't really preset, like reels, for example.
Oh yeah.
You can't preset a reel. And that's like, or at least with this app, you can't. And that is going to get the most visibility. So I don't know. Okay. So my system, when it's working is usually, so I have some help with a copywriter to write out my descriptions for my podcast episodes. I go through it and I give feedback and I pull out blurbs and use that to create my posts. And I pull out quotes from the podcast episode itself, whether I wrote it or it's an interview, and I use that to create my posts and I post them. But what I found for
text over image. So like a quote over an image.
Depends. So we have different types of images. So like I have different themes and categories for posts. So if it's like a toy tip Tuesday, it'll be a specific quote or some words about a toy tip, or it'll be an image. Say it's like, oh, I posted one recently. It was a picture of my wedding cake. I had some Funko cake toppers made for my wedding, and the skin tone of my Funko doesn't match me. So the toy tip was about choosing Pantone colors. So I posted this image. It didn't have any text around it. It was just the image of the cake toppers, and the toy tip is in the caption. But if it's another day, it might be a written toy tip with more written information in the caption, or it might be a quote video from a guest with, their information. Or it might just be kind of like a getting to know the toy coach post, or a post where I was on like a show or did an interview with someone famous. So it depends. But what I'm actually seeing now, I don't know how I'm going to keep doing social media because it doesn't seem to be giving the return, specifically Instagram.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking I might do more images that are more my lifestyle, but with captions that are more informational, because I think they actually do the best. So yeah, I think I'm testing that out, and I hope that it's something I can tell my students to do, but these things change so quickly. You never know what works for one person versus works for you. You really can't have one way to do it.
I think you hit on a point though of like consistency. I know I take the summers off because I just have to.
Okay.
Yeah. With the two boys and being home with them, I just, now I can record and start to do all fall and all winter. But yeah, when you, so being consistent is so important. And then, promoting these larger pieces of content in smaller chunks, because not everybody has an hour to kill listening to a podcast,
Right.
Some people do. They've got a commute, or they're sitting at their desk working or whatever. But, having these little snippets and then having a system. So that actually leads us to maybe jumping ahead just a little bit. We haven't done licensing and contract terms, but I do want to jump ahead just a little bit to the S for success and just measurements. So how do you keep yourself accountable then? So you're talking about consistency, you're talking about apps and what is working and what isn't. And I find this one of the hardest things as a creative. So maybe you can give us some insights, is how do you come up with a system and keep yourself accountable for posting to social media and then monitor and track the effective.
I don't monitor and track. I don't. No, I mean, I don't.
Screw it.
Nope. I used to I'm not a social media manager. That's not. So here's what I do. I realized after trying to do all of the things as if they're all my full-time job, that's not going to work. So I can't be a full-time social media manager, a full-time educator, a full-time podcaster. I can't do a full-time consultant. I can't do all this. It's not going to happen. I can post every day if it's not all needing to be the best content ever. I can do that. So usually when I'm not getting married and going on a honeymoon, I'm doing that. I'm doing that. But
do you do it in the morning? You just get it out of the way?
No, I queue up for the whole week. For me, I'll have one day a week where I'm like Wednesday, usually because my podcast drops. I'll say, today I'm willing to post an extra reel or an extra this or an extra that manually. But my goal is to just queue up the whole week in Smarter Queue so I don't have to think about it. I don't
So you pre-schedule and automate those posts to go out every Wednesday, and then maybe do one by hand on Wednesday.
No, I'll automate them to go out Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday.
Oh, okay.
And then I'll do some extra ones on Wednesday if I'm in the mood, just emotionally. But no, my main focus is number to track is the podcast downloads. Cause I'm I can't track everything. So it's podcast and then it's website hits.
Okay.
So I focus on those. And in the way that I focus is okay, what's driving those downloads? What's driving the website hits? I'll do more of that, or I'll make sure I'm doing my best work when I do that. If it's LinkedIn, if it's Instagram, if it's an ad, maybe. Like I try to do more of that, but I just focus on those metrics, because if I try to focus on like how many people have clicked on this and that, like I don't care. Like I don't have time for all that. But
How do you tell which post is driving to the podcast or driving to the website?
So I don't look what post, I look what platform. So is it
Okay.
all coming from Instagram? Is it all coming from this or that? But I do take note of, like, for example, I had a guest on my podcast. And with all my podcast guests, I have like an image, and then I take their image and we overlay it on a quote with my podcast logo. And I did notice that one of my guests came on, and the quote's like a video quote, so the words appear, right? And I noticed my last guest, he had like 20 likes or something on the post about his episode. And then the next day I manually posted about these, like the Funko cake toppers, and it has like 100 something likes and comments, right?
Yeah.
And so I see that, and I'm not really counting engagement all the time, but I see the disparity. So in my mind, I'm like, okay, there's something I have to do here. When I have podcast guests, what can I do differently rather than this quote graphic? Because it's obviously not working. What's probably happening is my followers are expecting to see me when they scroll, right? And now they're seeing this person who's a guest on my show, and it's not me.
Right.
So either I need to Photoshop us together where I'm going like this, or I need to screenshot us in the Zoom call, or I need to, you know what I mean? Like something that makes them feel like I'm closer to this person, or because the Funko cake toppers technically weren't me, but they were my wedding. Or I need to focus more on a toy with this person. Can I get a picture of them holding a toy? Can I get them like, so I do notice these things. And I'm like, okay, I have to make a long-term change to how I do these quote graphics, because it's not getting the feedback that I want.
Well, I love the way you're like thinking about this and sharing this thought process with us out loud, because it's really a nice deep dive into, like, I think an approachable method to handling social media, rather than saying, go into Facebook analytics and look at your CTR, your click-through rate.
I don't have time for that. I do that with paid ads, but not with free posts. No.
Right.
No.
All right. So we did art, product, presentation, educate, amplify. Let's talk licensing and contract terms. This is one that I like to do in plain English for people, because I think creatives are intimidated by the legalese, if you will. Is that a technical term? Legalese?
Technical? I know it. I know the term.
But yeah, I mean, contracts can be really scary, and licensing can be really scary. So what are some of the most important terms, or things that you look for in a contract that you'd be willing to give us some tips and tricks on, like maybe define for us in plain English, things that we should know and look for?
Sure. I will preempt this by saying I'm not a lawyer. This is not legal advice.
There's an acronym for that now. What? Apparently there's an acronym. ANALA. I'm not a lawyer. There's an acronym that people use in Reddit. I just learned it last night.
I'm going to look that up.
Yes. It's like, I'm not a lawyer.
That can't legally be standing. My lawyer told me I need this phrase. So
it's some kind of it's tech speak.
That's so funny.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I can't remember it off the top of my head, because it's a long one. It's like 6 letters. It's like ANALAS or something.
Oh my God.
But it's something that you put before you spout some legal advice.
Yes. I'm not a lawyer. That's not legal advice. But
but here we go.
So it depends on the type of contract I'm looking at. If I'm looking at like an entertainment contract, I'm looking for the word perpetuity. I literally will just Command F the whole contract before even reading it, and just like type in the word perpetuity to search the whole contract for it.
No, wait, tell us what type of contract is, because this is a new one for me. I do licensing contracts, Bill.
Right. So an entertainment contract, because sometimes I do like shows, or I'll appear in like an episode of something. So I want to know how long they want rights to whatever it is I'm recording for. Quite often it is perpetuity. Quite often.
Perpetuity is like forever, right?
Forever. Yeah. And perpetuity would just mean forever. It's pretty normal in the entertainment industry, I've learned. It's a scary thing, especially when you don't know how they'll edit it.
Ooh, yeah.
So you don't know, and it will even say in there like you're kind of at the mercy of their editors. I actually just turned down a pretty big opportunity because I didn't think that they were paying enough for the stress that I would be under emotionally to prepare for the show, knowing that they would own it in perpetuity and I don't know how I'd be edited and they'd be asking off the cuff questions. And I felt, as great of an opportunity as it is, and I've done it before and it's amazing visibility, I also know the emotional stress that it put me through, and I don't know that it's worth not being paid for. So
no, that's great. That's great advice.
Please,
so an entertainment contract is for appearing on a on a video or something like that, and you look for in perpetuity. Like I've always heard of exclusivity. That's one we always look for in licensing contracts. That's one, to look for, because it means they get it and nobody else can. Other terms, other thoughts.
Yeah. And then I would say when I'm hiring a freelancer, you want to, the contract you want is like a work for hire agreement. Whether you're hiring a freelancer or you're being hired as a freelancer, it's important to know what work for hire contracts typically mean. That anything could be called a work for hire contract. You have to read it. But like typically it means that whatever you create, whoever you're creating it for owns it outright. You won't get any royalties or additional payments, which is important to know if you're creative, giving away your artwork to someone who's going to make millions of them and sell millions of them, or if you are someone who's trying to purchase artwork or music, and you want to have the freedom to sell it and use it however you want. It's really important to know that you have those rights in that kind of a contract. And then for licensing, like in a toy space, minimum guarantee is one that pops into mind. It's a term that tells you how much this company is going to pay you regardless of how many they actually sell. So say you come up with an invention, the company licenses that invention, they're going to use it, and they're going to produce product based on that invention. Usually there's a minimum guarantee of like how many units they will promise to kind of pay you for. It's really a dollar amount.
Yeah.
And it's not technically about the units, but it's the dollar amount they're promising to pay you.
I've seen that one.
Right. So they're assuming they'll be able to sell this many units. That's why they're agreeing to that amount. So you want to know what that number is, because if they don't sell it to anybody, or if they sell it to somebody and somebody charges it back to them, you want to know how much money you're actually guaranteed to get, like no matter what. So yeah, I would say that's a good one.
That is a good one. That is a good one to know. I hadn't seen that one before. And before I'll tell you the story later.
A certain thing happened.
I did a thing. All right. So art, product, presentation, educating, amplifying through automation, licensing and contract terms, and finally, S for success. So how do you measure success? What are your measurements for success, and how do you celebrate it?
Oof, I'm not good at celebrating my achievements. That's why I married the man I married.
That's why I asked this question, because so many of us creatives, we do these things and we just, oh yeah, I did it. I did this thing. And okay. And we just go on and we do something else, and we don't stop to celebrate it.
Nothing is good enough.
Yeah.
I think as a creative, you are so aware of others' creativity that when you do something that's great, right, and are great, you just look over your shoulder and you're like, oh, but that's actually better. And like, so I shouldn't celebrate because look at them, like it's so hard. It's hard.
It is.
So,
well, how do you measure success? I know you look at your posts and you look at engagement, but like, what's a win for you?
Honestly, a win for me is just being able to continue doing my business, and having a lifestyle that is free and sustainable. It's a win.
Yeah.
So if I were to work again, like full-time work, I would want to be able to feel, or at least most of the time feel like I have this kind of a free, open lifestyle. And it's not necessarily about just being able to take naps whenever I want, but it's
So that's your measurement of success. Can I nap today?
Can I
Yes, I
nap?
can.
I can totally nap. But it's like I don't really believe in our like hustle culture anymore. Not that I'm a very hard worker, but
Oh, yeah. Yeah, you are.
oh, thank you.
All the stuff
But
you do, heck
yeah,
yeah.
but I want to work when I'm feeling energized to work, and I want to nap when I need to nap. You know what I mean? Like
I do.
I just want to, I'll stay up till 4 a.m. working, but
Yeah.
I want to nap at 2 p.m. if I need to. So
Yeah.
like,
I just had a nap this morning. I ain't ashamed to admit it. I had to. My oldest son was so nervous about going into middle school. He kept me up till 2 o'clock in the morning.
oh my gosh.
I can't sleep,
No.
mommy. Oh, I tried everything. Meditation, journaling, warm milk. Child, go to
Oh,
sleep.
you got to try the brown noise. That's my new best friend. Oh my God.
What?
Brown noise is on
Is that
YouTube.
different from white noise?
It is. And I did not know that. And it sounds like an airplane. It sounds like the hum of an airplane when you're in an airplane. It's like a lower frequency.
Oh.
It's very good. Yeah.
Oh, I'll have to check that out. I do like I have some music on that I work with that is just tonalities. And I like those
nice.
deeper G. I'll have to tell you, Rolf Kent, I think. Fantastic album for working. And it's just
okay, I'll look into that.
Yeah, yeah.
Rolf Kent.
So being able to nap, a measurement of success.
But okay, fine. Wait, let me do a new one. So also I feel like
Nope, we're going with that one.
I'm sorry, but like
for success.
I mean, I just really enjoy the naps. I mean, I love when people identify me and say like, "Oh, you're the toy coach, and you help me do this, and you help me do that." But it feels like selfish, not selfish. Like, it feels
Self-care.
bad to. No, it feels bad to feel good about those things. Like it feels so self-involved to feel so proud about those things. Like you helped me do this, and I'm so happy I did, and I'm so happy for you. But I almost feel like I can't take credit because you came up with an amazing idea after listening to my podcast, but it's still your idea. So
well, that's humility. But I think you just got to flip it and realize that it's pride in your students. Like,
right.
You know, it's okay to be proud of somebody else's achievements because I had trouble with that when I was teaching.
Yeah.
And then I had to realize that, I'm not their mom, but I can be proud of them.
Yeah.
Because they've made strides and you've helped them in those strides.
Yeah.
So
it's a weird feeling.
It is. It's very layered and it sounds like you're very humble. So
I hope so. I'm trying to stay there. Like, and that's the other thing, like too much praise can just, so I'll take a nap and that.
Self-care is not selfish. Sometimes you got to recharge, especially after these conferences. Like you said, they're very wearing.
Oh my gosh, so wearing. Great, but just, wearing.
You give away so much in these things, like so much energy and so much time that, you got to really take care of yourself. Otherwise, you'll get sick.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Yeah. I've been sick. So yeah.
Yeah, I got COVID after the last one. Lucky me.
Oh, did you really? I'm so sorry.
Oh, that's all right. It was fine. I spent the first 5 days of my family vacation in the Florida Keys in isolation, but I had a beautiful view. I couldn't have picked a better place to get COVID.
COVID, yeah. That's well, I had like years ago, I was like really sick, like bad sick. But I think ever since that happened, I just got a little bit more like, I need to enjoy life. And I also need to just go after my dreams. If it's going to be a CEO of a toy company that either I own or I just joined, I need to go after those things. And then I also just need to like take the vacation, just take the vacation. So ever since then, I just have a very different view on stuff.
No, it's fantastic. It really is. And I think that's important for people to hear is that self-care is not selfish. You've got to celebrate your success and not wear yourself out and take the time to recharge.
Yeah.
So if somebody wanted to hire you because you are a coach and you help people take their ideas from idea concept to fruition,
Mhm.
where can they get hold of you?
Yeah, you can email me at info@thetoycoach.com. You could go on my website. There's a phone number on there.
What's the
Um,
website?
thetoycoach.com. I'm the toy coach everywhere. Uh,
She is the
but
toy coach, folks.
yeah, but I also do like aside from coaching with Toy Creators Academy, which is great, and I would love to have you join if you have an idea. It's like a 12-week program. Typically, when we do a live launch, I also started doing a self-study version of the program where you can go through the materials, and then there's a separate opportunity to like meet once a month, so it's not as like 12 weeks every single week and intensive.
Right. So they
Um,
could do it at their own pace.
oh
Well,
yeah,
that's fantastic.
yeah, and it's more affordable too, and I think people appreciate that as well.
Hmm.
And then, but I still do corporate like clients or individual clients where if you want to hire me for a month or two to help with either design or PR, I don't have a ton of availability, but I take one or two clients on at a time.
Fantastic. You are all over the place and I love it. You've given us such great information. Thank you so much.
You, Erin.
Oh, thank you.